Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call the hearing to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory and the home and the traditional lands of the Ojibwe, the Cree, Dakota peoples, and in the national homelands of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ron Merritt. I'll be your chairperson this morning. The panel member that is present is Linda McFadden, and via Zoom is our other member, which is Bill Moretsky. Our secretary is Jaswinder Kumar, and representing the city from the assessment department is Mr. Wong. We'll be hearing application for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested has been described in each application and will limit discussions to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anybody speaking in these matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by City Council and is independent along with the City Administration. We make our decisions based on the evidence provided at this hearing and issue a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board decision in respect to application may be appealed to the Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to application of exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the board's order. In respect to the hearing this morning, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. It'll be then the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then it'll be the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have the opportunity to summarize as they wish. Once all evidence about the application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket this morning. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. This morning, we'll be hearing items 1 to 10 on our docket. So I'll ask our secretary to swear in the assessor and affirm the applicant. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Wong, please state your full name.
I'm Wong.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, please state your full name.
Rocky Neufeld.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Neufeld. All right, Mr. Wong, we have 10 items on the docket this morning. So the first one was going to be 2199 Portage Avenue. So take us through this property if you don't mind.
Okay. The subject property is 2199 Portage Avenue. The roll number is 070-500-37000. The file number is 22-2675. The subject property is a residential apartment block. It's 3 stories high. It was built in 1954 and has 24 suites with 15 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. Close to Assiniboine Park on Portage Avenue. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $784 to get a potential income of $225,000. We use a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $218,000. And we use a 49% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $110,000. Capped at 5.2%, we have an estimated market value of $2,129,000. On On page 5 are our rent comparables, showing that the rent reviews are in line with what's in the market. On page 6 is a summary of the income and expenses for 2020. Their income was 226,000. Their expenses were 110,000, and their net operating income is 116,000. Their actual NOI at 116,000 supports the model NOI at 110,000. On page 7 is information on how we derived our cap rates. The majority of the cap rates falling between 4.8 and 5.6%. But there are some in the the lower 20th percentile, below 4.8%, and some in the highest 20th percentile, higher than 5.6%. On page 8 are some cap rate sales that range from 3.6% to 5.74%. On page 10 and 11 is the income statement supplied by the owner. So when you look at the model rent and cap rate, they're both supported by the market, and the actual net operating income that for the subject property supports the model net operating income. So I ask you maintain the assessed value at $2,129,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Neufeld, questions of Mr. Wong?
Yes, on page, so your valuation on page 4, has this all been done by the model?
Yes.
And what are the factors that go into the creation of the capitalization rate? Do you know?
It would be income and expenses from the market and applied against time adjusted sales.
Well, no, that's the data. I meant the factors. What are the basis for valuation and establishing the cap rate? What do you tell the model?
I don't know the details on that.
Okay. Reason I'm asking is I was reading ahead, and there does not seem to be a very good consistency on factors such as age. But but you're saying you don't know how it works?
Correct.
Okay. And just for the record, how many apartments did the city of Winnipeg sell or purchase last year, or in the last 2 years, 3 years?
How many properties did they sell?
Yeah, apartments. Did they buy, sell, or represent anyone in the last 3 years? Do you know?
I do not know. The numbers that you have on page 8, did you prepare these calculations? No, my colleague did.
And did you have a chance to review his calculations?
Some of them, yes.
Are there any here that would best represent the subject?
Yeah, it appears that there are a few that are 1955 built to 1969 built.
Which ones are those?
Well, there's 555 Corden was built in 1955. 203 Bertrand was built in 1963. 700 St. Mary's was built in 1961.
Okay, and have you listened to testimony from your colleagues in regard to the 700 St. Mary's sale, in that they don't care to rely on it as an outlier?
No.
Okay, those are my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Newfield. Ms. McFadden,
I have no further questions.
Mr. Boretsky.
Yeah, just again, looking at the cap rate evidence on page 8. I'm just wondering what is your assessment of the correlation between the age of the apartment and the cap rate? Is that a major factor?
From my observations, it seems to be less and less, because I've seen older buildings have the same cap rates as some newer buildings. So sometimes there is, as far as I can tell, sometimes there is no correlation.
Yeah, just looking at your evidence, it does not seem to be much of a correlation. Just that's my observation.
Yeah, and I've looked at appraisals in the past of say newer buildings, and they've used sales of 1970s buildings to generate cap rates for newer buildings. So it seems like there might be less correlation than maybe in the past.
All right, that's the only question I have, Mr. Chair.
I thank you, Mr. Wong. I've gone through quite a few of the applicants or the cases that we have, or the docket, and an interesting thing has come up in regards to you are defending the model, are you not?
Yes.
Okay, so you do a slight variation in a calculation on this one here, which is also applicable to some of the rest of the information that we are going to be dealing with this morning. And that is that you do you're comparing the NOI of the city at $110,686, and you're doing an NOI actual of 116, I think it's 111. So, and I see what you're doing. You're trying to justify or conclude what the model is doing. But my question to you, if you're trying to justify the model this way, why wouldn't you be using the NOI that you concluded at 116,111?
I guess I could have, but that would have required a submission for a increase in the assessed value. And in this particular case, I'm summarizing the income and expenses to, in this case, support the model. Just to say that the model, the value that the model has estimated is accurate and reasonable.
All right. I thank you. Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
Yes, firstly, I did, after the assessor answered the question on specifically Bertrand as a favorable comparison, I did send some rebuttal information, and I apologize. It's a lengthy document, but I'm only going to refer to one page on it. It was pre-prepared. How would you like me to proceed?
Do your presentation, and then we'll deal with the rebuttal.
Okay, so 2199 Portage. I've been familiar with this property for quite some time, and we have the income and expenses going back at least 15 years. What we've done on this particular property is, on page 1 is, we're, generally what we often do is we use the final year of rent. In this case, we're using the average years because the property has had an up and down experience, and that's a call we make by knowing the property site. So you'll see sometimes we've used an average, and sometimes we'll use the 2020 value. This time we used an average just because of its history, and the same with the expenses. Expenses go up and down, and the reason that 2019 had high expenses and lower income was just suite turnover. There's a suite turnover, and they got to do some remediation. The suite gets knocked out of commission for a month, and you lose income and you incur expenses. That is the nature of this business. So we come up with 106,000 as our NOI, a true NOI. The company that runs this, as you'll see, I think most all the properties today are theirs. It's Smith Agency. They have 100 of these buildings, and they know what they're doing. The cap rate we're using is 6%. The primary evidence is contained on page 23, where Colliers has a combination of selling a lot of these sites, and that's why I wanted that read at the evidence. We sell them. So we're on the front lines when it happens. We do not present hearsay or guesses or sit at our desks and write up valuations. We have brokers who go out and do the work. Good apartments, 5 to 6%. That's our range. And it is not a one size fits all. You have to look at the property. The property is essentially a grade C or D property. Colliers tracks A's and B's. We put a rate of 6% on it because it's a good, how do we say this, a good deed because of the location. But again, we've detailed the specific issues on the site in that 1-bedroom units, lack of parking stalls, the age, and I'm going to repeat myself. I'm going to say this once, and you'll see. We do not believe in effective year built. We believe in 3 areas that you look at the physical condition. The actual year built, which cannot change because you're not changing the foundation, the quality, and the condition. And that's how we factor in our cap rates. It's transparent, it's in front of you. We know how it's been made up. We're not taking orders from a computer program. So 6% is the cap on this, and that's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Newfield. Mr. Wong, question?
No questions.
Ms. McFadden?
I have no questions.
I thank you. Mr. Moretsky?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you could just provide a little more information on how you got the cap rate there, specifically on your page 2. I was wondering about with that chart there. How do you? It comes up at 6.1%, or 5%. You using 6, and the subject was graded at 6.1, correct?
Yeah, it's just a rounding issue. I think tenths of points are kind of splitting hairs. I generally don't like to operate in tenths of points. I prefer a quarter points, and it was closer to the 6% than 6.25.
Okay, but this is the framework that you use to come up with your cap rate here on page 2.
That's correct.
All right.
And it's just 23 points, all of which go into the creation of a cap rate. And this isn't my invention. This is Colliers National's invention. So we do have our own system.
All right. I mean, I've seen it before, but I just wanted to ask a few questions about it this time.
No, and that's the whole reason we put it there is to look at, to challenge, to look at the detailed line items and say, if you disagreed with me and you thought one was different, at least you can see how we arrived at it and come up with your own conclusions on the factors and all of these all of these numerical values represent very, very small changes. Individually, that is.
Right. So how would this this methodology fit with your, did you put any other studies in here somewhere about cap rates, or is this?
Oh, yes, that's what I was mentioning. The study, the study on page 23 is the details aren't in it, but page 23 shows a range of 5 to 6%. And the 5 to 6% is based on the definitions on page 24, top right corner, high rise, low rise. That these are superior properties. The subject is not a superior property. Like a modern high rise, it'll give you an idea of the concept of the top rated ones would be the apartments being built near IKEA. That the complex there are very modern apartments. Those would be top of the line, high rise, and then a new low rise would be. I think we have a copy of the low rise in here as a sample, a new one, a good one, page. Yes, page 4. So that would represent the Collier's low rise. And that was a new one, 3-story walk up, capped at 5.49%. And our subject on picture page 2 obviously pales in comparison, and it's just a question of what investors are willing to pay and what sort of returns they're looking for.
All right, thank you. Sorry,
Thank
I
you.
need to repeat something there. I know.
No. I've repeated 600 times this year.
All right. Mr. Newfield, do you have rebuttal? So
yes, and it's just
okay.
very brief. It's called Cap Rebuttal 4. And all I have was on page 31. So this is in regard to Bertrand, which I had asked the assessor about, and their calculation was 4.77%. We have 2 valuations on it. One done at time of sale by our office was at 5.37%, and the opinion on that was really the St. Boniface location, which is the best apartment market in the city, most desirable by investors. Just one of those factors that I wish I could explain it properly, but it is what it is. Now, the listing on this indicates 7.44% as the cap rate as put up by the agent, and that is indicated on page 32 by the listing. So I submit that the assessor's calculation lacks the detail and the ability for us to find out. I mean, I know what they did wrong, but I would like to see it, and I wish I could show you.
I thank you. Mr. Wong, questions?
No questions. Just saying that our cap rate calculations were based off of the income and expenses that were relevant to the time of the sale.
Right. Ms. McFadden?
I have no questions.
Mr. Boretsky?
No further questions. Thank you.
Either party want summation?
Oh, thank you.
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Rocky.
The assessor is incorrect. He said that their calculations were based at time of sale. What I'm showing you in the cap and the rebuttal is a valuation done at time of sale by the listing agent who is selling the property and by Colliers who appraised it after the sale. The assessor's workups are done a year before the sale based on income from income and expense forms, which by design alone mean that they're dated and don't represent the sale. I mean, the concept is very, very simple. If you have a beat up old car, you fix it up before you sell it. If you have a beat up old apartment, you fix it up before you sell it. So income from a year prior to sale means nothing. Thank you.
I thank you. Let's go to the next property, which is 2193 Portage Avenue. Mr. Wong, whenever you're ready.
Give me 1 second, please.
Yeah.
The subject property is 2193 Portage Avenue. The roll number is 070-500-57000. The file number is 22-2660. This is a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1954 and it has 24 suites with 10 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rent of $803 to get a potential income of $231,000. We use a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $223,000. And we use a 51% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $107,000. Capped at 5.2%, we have an estimated market value of $2,076,000. On page 5, our rent comparable, showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. On page 6 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. In 2020, their income was $220,000, their expenses were $116,000, and their net operating income was $104,000. Their actual net operating income of $104,000 supports the model at $107,000. On page 7 and 8 is information on how we derived our cap rates, with some cap rate sales that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. On page 10 and 11 is the income statement, income questionnaire submitted by the owner. So the model rent and the model cap rate are supported by the market, and the actual net operating income of the subject property supports the model net operating income. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $2,076,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Newfield, questions?
Yes, and I'll ask this one all the time, but just for the record, valuation on page 4, was that all done by the model?
Yes.
And may we, as Mr. Chairperson, may we assume that questions asked and answered previously will can be carried forward on the methodology side questioned?
Yes, Mr. Newfield.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden?
I don't have any further questions.
I thank you. Mr. Moretsky?
Yes, page 8, the capitalization rate evidence, is that the same evidence used in the previous item?
Yes, it is.
Okay. That's the only question I have. Thank you.
I thank you. I guess I'm just looking, Mr. Wong, and the previous one was 24 units, which were all 1 bedrooms, and this one here has got 9, but you're fairly close in regards to value. The previous one was $2,129,000, and you're coming in at $2,076,000. So, but I noticed the cap rate is exactly the same as what you used before on the previous one. So I don't have any further questions. Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
Thank you. Again, very, very similar. And if you were just looking at the pictures, you'd say, I think we've seen this one before. But Portage Avenue has got a lot of blocks that all look the same, all built around the same time. The method we did on this one differed slightly from the other one because again, we had 15 years of history, same ownership. And in this case, the income, we use the last year of income rather than the average because it has shown a steady progression. We also averaged out the expenses rather than taking 1 year in isolation. You'll note in 2018, the expenses were higher, and that's just another indication of the way they run their operation. Whenever there's a vacancy, they take the opportunity to do a rehab on a single apartment, and that's not an extensive one. It's just going to be carpet, paint, replace any appliances, replace any fixtures, need a new toilet or a new sink. That's what they do. So it just relates to turnover, and those are expenses that typically should be stabilized over a 10-year period, 7 to 10-year period, and we use the 3-year period. So our estimate of NOI is 100,394. In terms of cap rate, I actually disagree with this a bit. It's pretty much the same issue as the last one, lack of parking. And yes, it's on a bus route, but it still doesn't have car parking, which means that you're limiting the interest in this property to people who make less money, which means you have less ability to grow your income. So if you thought this is a good renovation project, you wouldn't do it because there's no upside. There's no way of attracting a higher rent if you have a brand new interior build out because you still don't have parking. But the main issue between this one and the other one, where I think this one should actually capped higher, are the bachelor suites. Bachelor suites are not desirable in the investment market. Would put in my mind a downward pressure on the cap. I would probably be thinking this should have been 6.5%, 6.75%. I'm not changing it, but that's I'm just bringing that comment. So same as the other ones, and the way we found our capitalization, and that's our value. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Questions of Mr. Newfield?
No questions.
Thank you, Ms. McFadden.
No, I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Boretsky.
No, I don't have any questions either.
Okay, I just have one, Mr. Newfield. Both buildings are identical, and but this one has got bachelors. There's 9 bachelors, and you're only in your presentation compared to the previous one. With the same number of units, there's only $100,000 difference. So you feel like that should be the value?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I would have capped this higher because of that. Person who did this missed that. I'm not preparing these valuations anymore. I'm only showing up, presenting them, and critiquing them. But I would have had a bigger spread between the first one we heard and this one. This one probably a bit more than $100,000 by a higher cap rate. So I just leave my personal suggestion would be probably about 6.5%, and that would put it $1,544,000. Again, a small.
Are you suggesting that? Are you suggesting that?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So give us the figures again then.
NOI 100,394.
Yeah.
Cap rate 6.5%.
Okay.
Value 1,544,500. Rounded to 1,545,000.
I thank you. Mr. Wong?
No questions.
I thank you. Ms. McFadden?
No further questions, no.
I thank you. Mr. Boretsky?
So you changed your mind then on changing the cap rate?
Well, I never change my mind. I just sometimes, I do a lot of these verbal changes at the board, and as I'm presenting this, yes, but I believe it should be lower value, higher cap.
I just thought I heard you say that you weren't changing it before.
I did, but I got goaded into it, so I went with the flow.
All right. No, I have no further questions. Thank you.
I thank you. Summation, either party?
No, thanks.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Let's go to the next one, which is 2026 Portage Avenue. Mr. Wong, whenever you're ready.
Okay, the subject property is 2026 Portage Avenue. The roll number is 070-513-19000. The file number is 22-2656. This is a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1957 and has 18 suites with 12 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $913 to get a potential income of $197,000. We use a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $190,000. And we use a 48% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $98,000. Capped at 5.2%, we have an estimated market value of $1,895,000. On page 5, our rent comparable, showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. On page 6 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. So in 2020, their income was $175,000, and their expenses were $149,000. Less interest, their expenses were $135,000, making their net operating income $40,000. You can see that the income in 2018 to 2019 went from 179 to 195, and then it went back down to 175 in 2020. It seems that there is some changes happening to this building, as the expenses might indicate as well. Expenses in 2018 are $113,000 and $1,000 in 2019, which exceeds their income. So to stabilize their income a bit, I used their 2019 operating income of $195,000 and their expenses of $93,000, estimating their net operating income to be $102,000. This $102,000 supports the model net operating income of $98,000. On page 7 and 8 is information on how we derive our cap rates and some cap rate sales that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. So the remainder of the brief are the income statements submitted by the owner. So this property is in a transition, but when we stabilize their operating income, it supports the model. and the model rent and the model cap rate is also supported by the market. I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $1,895,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Newfield?
Again, for the record, page 4, this was evaluation done by the model. Is that correct?
Yes.
I'm having a hard time understanding page 6, this calculation. Am I reading this right? Is that you've selected the highest year of income, which was 2019, and the lowest year of expenses, which was 2018, to make your NOI estimate?
Yes. It appears that there is work being done to the property, and I think it would be reasonable to use their 2019 income, seeing as if there is work being done, that would be the minimum level of income that they would be achieving.
And how did you determine that work was being done?
Pardon me?
How did you determine work is being done?
Well, I don't know that. It's just that the income and the expenses are not stable at all, and so it appears that when their expenses jump from 113,000 from 2018 to 2019 at 200,000. It's in my experience, it seems to suggest renovation work being done, but maybe you can enlighten us on the work that's being done to the building, if any.
Well, I'm sorry, why are you asking me? This is your evidence. Aren't you supposed to know before you make these assumptions?
That's what it's indicating in my experience, and that's all that I'm saying.
Did you bring the board any evidence?
Aside from the inconsistent income and inconsistent expenses, aside from that, no.
No, I'm looking at the City of Winnipeg's website on construction permits. Did you look that up?
No.
Are you aware that there has been no permit on this building since 2014?
Are you saying that if there's no permits, there's no work being done?
I'm just asking you, are you aware that no permits have been taken out since 2014?
If you are saying that, I will take your word for it. But at the same time, there is work that is done without permits sometimes.
And you're testifying that you can do work without a permit. Now, I've just had a failed an electrical inspection in my own house. How do you figure that you can do work without a permit?
I'm not saying you can do work without a permit. In my experience, I have seen work that has been done without a permit, where work in a property has been done, but no permit has been taken out. So that's what I've observed, and that's just what I'm stating. I'm not saying that it's correct in any sort of way. I'm just saying that it can happen.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
I thank you. Ms. McFadden?
I guess just to follow up on Mr. Neufeld was saying, it seems odd that you would use the highest income, particularly when it went down the next year to 175. It does appear that was a bit of an anomaly, that high income. Which would bring the NOI down $10,000, which is pretty significant.
It would do that. I think what I am getting from this is that there does appear, like if you look at their expenses in 2018 at 113,000 and their expenses in 2019 at 200,000, to me that indicates that some work is being done. And usually when work is being done, they're doing it to increase to renovate the building and to increase the rents on the building. So I thought it was reasonable to use their 2019 income to try to estimate their operating income.
How would you explain the drop again the next year then? Would that just be higher vacancies or?
It could be, I would be speculating. I do not know.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Moretsky,
Yeah, no, I had the same question, and I think you've answered it as best you could. Thank you. No more questions.
I guess, Mr. Wong, you know, if you look at the expenses, you're making certain assumptions, are you not?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Newfield, your presentation?
Yes, and again, we went and used a slightly different approach because I think, as we've all noted, the income went up and then down, so it is not a steady increase performer. It's blocks all differ. I think sometimes people have the assumption income always goes up. It does not. And especially during this period with all the increased competition, it's probably the most new product been put on the Winnipeg market in decades. So we have higher income, low income, higher income, lower income. The expenses varied as well. Now, what we did was slightly different is we looked at the 2020 expenses, and we did stabilize them because they were a bit on the high side, and we brought the R&M down to 1,800 a unit. And that's just normal turnover, normal operations. It was just, as I stated earlier, it's the same operator, same modus operandi, as they say. They had more turnover. They spent more money on, they had to spend more money on suite for the new tenants. And we thought in this case, because you see, we actually talked to the owner, and you know, those forms that they send, the ones with the phone number at the bottom, the ones the assessor has, and he's even put in the brief, he's even put the phone number of the person who did this. Well, I call them and I go through these one by one and find out, what did you do? In this case, they hadn't done a fair amount of work for several years because they didn't have as much turnover, and they did it this year. So that's what the reason behind our methodology. And so our stabilization was at 83,396, which is considerably higher than the 26,000 I actually earned. And the cap rate side, I think it's the same issues that for the first two we've heard. The only difference here is that the suite mix is good, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms. So there was no deduction for that, but there was for the size of it. And the size is at 18 units for an investment property. A smaller building produces less stable income, which is obvious by the statements you're looking at. Less stable income is for the investor. You know, you've spread your risk too thinly, and so therefore it impacts the cap rate. So but it ended up, like I said, more 2 bedrooms, but less units, so the same 6%, same rest of the rationale. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Newfield. Mr. Wong, questions?
Questions?
Pardon me?
No questions.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden?
But just to be clear, the work that they did in that particular year was more deferred maintenance kind of work, like carpets and things that wouldn't require permits, correct?
I think the gross majority of the work they would do are taking in a suite and replacing the carpets and repainting the walls. All electrical work requires permits. Most all mechanical work requires permits, and decorating does not. So
Right.
This is just suite turnover.
Okay. And I noticed that you've given us here the 2020 assessment, which was 1.670. What you're looking at this year is 1.390.
Oh, geez, I never looked at that. Yeah, let me.
That seems a fairly significant drop.
Yeah, but you know, we keep our blinders on here. Let me just, I just want to double check something on that question just to see if there's an outstanding appeal on it. Very rarely for this type of property. Most times these are resolved at the board. So this is Smith 2026. No, this is not under appeal municipal board. I guess, my client is pretty easygoing. I tell him my recommendations and he says, nah, leave it. So we didn't appeal it. I think the numbers speak to themselves, but to be fair, they had higher NOI the last reference period. So it might have been supported.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Moretsky.
No questions. Thank you.
I have none. Either party want summation?
Fine.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, let's go on to 1934 Portage Avenue. Mr. Wong, whenever you're ready.
The subject property is 1934 Portage Avenue. The roll number is 075-691-36950. The file number is 22-2653. This is a residential apartment that's 3 stories high. It's built in 1952 and it has 35 suites with 1 indoor parking stall and 18 outdoor parking stalls. On page three is a picture of the subject location. Rent of $879 to get a potential income of $369,000. Leaves a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $357,000, and leaves a 50% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $178,000. Capped at 5.3%, we have an estimated market value of $3,336,000. Oh, sorry, $3,360,000. Sorry. On page 5 are our rent comparables showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. On page 6 is a summary of the income and expenses for the subject property. Their 2020 net operating income is $189,000. This supports the model's net operating income at $178,000. On page 7 and 8 is information on how we derived our cap rates and some cap rate sales that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. And on page 10 is the mailer submitted by the owner. So the model rent and the model cap rate are supported by the market, and the actual net operating income supports the model net operating income. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $3,360,000.
I thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Newfield.
Again, just for the record, this was done by the model, your valuation on page 4.
Yes.
And when the model did this, did it treat this as 3 separate units, or was this input as 1 unit? Do you know?
I believe it should be 3 buildings. Yes, 3 buildings.
Okay, and the model does have a differentiation then for a number of buildings?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And are you aware that it is on 3 separate titles?
No.
Okay. And so you're not aware that the history then on this. Do you know anything about the mechanical systems in the building?
I do not.
Looking at the picture on page 3, and I appreciate that you don't have the titles in front of you, but knowing that, trusting me that I tell you it's on 3 separate titles, it's obvious that they don't have the same parking allocation for every single building, do they?
I'm not sure how the parking is allocated.
Okay. Do any of your examples on page 8 remotely resemble this?
I guess the ones that are built in the same time frame would resemble them.
That's what you're saying. So that you had mentioned before Bertrand Court and in St. Mary's. Is that what you're speaking to?
Yes,
And are those all single buildings?
I'm not sure.
Okay, those are my questions then.
I thank you. Mr. Wong? Oh, sorry. Ms. McFadden?
Mr. Wong, the cap rate at 5.3, given that this is 3 separate buildings, do you think that accurately reflects the amount of risk?
I believe it does. Like when I look at the cap rates that the model utilizes, they accurately estimate property values in my experience and view. So I think the 5.3% does accurately reflect the subject property.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
I thank you. Ms. Boretsky?
No questions, thank you.
Just offhand, Mr. Wong, can you tell us, is there any statistics around what the commercial apartment buildings percentage-wise have gone up since the last assessment in general? I know that it would be, different areas, but in general? Anything around?
I'm not sure. I think it did go up compared to the last cycle, but I'm not sure what the number is.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Newfield, your presentation?
Thank you. So page 1, this is 3 separate titled buildings. And they were built together. There is 1 boiler for all 3 sites, and it's piped underground from the building it's in to the other 2. And I don't know which one it is. I think it's the one on the immediate left that has the boiler. So whereas they do have 3 titles, the difficulty on dealing with them is that you could never sell them individually on that basis. They'd have to be sold as a package. But the it's a fairly decent mix of suites, kind of skewed towards 1 bedrooms. We've been fighting this for years because, as you can see on page 3, the statement is for all 3. They're run together, and I think we've had to deal with the penalty for years on this. And eventually, the assessor decided to merge the rolls, and of course, it was kind of a surprise move that they did on it. But regardless, we're just dealing with it. You can see that our incomes are very, very similar, and not much to look at between us. We're actually a couple thousand higher, so this is a cap rate issue, and our issue and the cap rates have to do with some of the typical Portage Avenue problem. These blocks and all the others, 18 parking stalls for 35 units. Arguably there's room for more. However, that land abuts a park, so I think it'd be a bit of a problem to try to get in more. You're going to have to deal with a lot of civic problems in getting approval for that. Not saying it's impossible, but it doesn't exist now, and until they got approval for it, it doesn't exist. This would actually be probably a more interesting project for conversion if you could get parking, and I think that's a restriction that especially with the park location, but it's a restriction that you have to look at in the cap rate. It's a poor prospect for renovation. The skewing to the 1 bedroom units is a minor issue, not as big as the bachelor issue I told you about earlier. The age on it, well, you can't change 1952 construction. It is what it is. They're in good condition considering their age, and similar to the other ones. I think the the issue that we're probably most concerned about is the common mechanical systems, which is a very strange factor. And that's why the cap rate should be higher at 6.25%. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Mr. Wong, questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Mr. Moretsky?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, was this property previously appealed? Came before the board?
Yeah, and it has in different setups. I think last year there was a bit of a dispute on whether it was 3 or 1, and there was that last minute that the city put the rolls together and without permission, and then they separated them, and now they're back together, which is fine. We're just concerned that it doesn't happen after we filed our appeal, and then they merge it. I'm just looking at the history on this, just to give you an idea. 1934. The previous assessment was the result of a 15-1 agreement. Surprisingly, I get a few of those that we agreed to that number, and I think in comparison to the other ones, this is the same ownership, but you can see why we agreed to it is that even though we have the boiler problem, the income has been more consistent. So the boiler problem is consistently a problem, but the income is stable. So if one were to go with the trend as suggested earlier, was there a market increase? You can see that we believe so in this case, because going back 15 years, it's been a steady performer, unlike the 3 we've heard already.
Your NOIs are almost fairly close.
Yes.
It's just a matter of cap rate.
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Thank you. Summation, either party?
No, thank you.
I slipped mine in the question and answer earlier.
Okay. Let's continue down the way. Portage Avenue, 1794 Portage Avenue. Mr. Wong, whenever you're ready.
Okay, the subject property is 1794 Portage Avenue. The roll number is 070-212-66000. The file number is 222-2647. This is a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1952, and it has 30 suites with 16 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We used average rents of $902 to get a potential income of $324,000. We used a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $314,000. And we used a 58% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $129,000. Capped at 5.25%, we have an estimated market value of $2,462,000. On page 5 are some cap rate comparables showing that, rent comparables showing that rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. On page 6 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. Yeah, on the bottom chart, using their 2020 income and their average expenses from 2018 to 2020, their estimated net operating income is $144,000, and this supports the model's net operating income at $129,000. On page 7 and 8 is information on how we derived our cap rates. With some cap rate sales that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. The remainder of the brief are the income statements supplied by the owner. So the model rents and the model cap rate is supported by the market, and the actual net operating income supports maintain the.
I thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Newfield, questions?
Yeah, virtually identical to the last one, page 4. This is done by the model, correct?
Yes.
And in this case, there are two buildings joined by, you would call it a breezeway of some sort. Does the model take that into account, that it's two small buildings?
I'm not sure if it does, but it is. It is on record as being two buildings.
Okay. Those are my questions.
I thank you, Ms. McFadden.
So this particular property has a higher proportionate expenses at 59%. Would you attribute that perhaps to the fact that there's two buildings? Although the last one with 3 buildings had only a 50% expense rate.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that has an effect on it, and sometimes it doesn't. It just appears that the attributes that we have for this building indicate a higher expense ratio, and I think that's where it's coming from, not necessarily from the number of buildings.
Okay, thank you. All my questions.
I thank you, Mr. Moretsky.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask some questions about your methodology used on page 6, the income and expense summary. So on the income down below, or in that box down below, you have the income for 2020. That's what you decided to use for income was 2020, correct?
Yeah, actually it says 2020, but I actually made a bit of a mistake and used their 2000.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
I guess it does say 2020, but I made a mistake because their 2020 income is actually 303,000 and not 298. The 298 is actually their 2019 income.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I actually didn't catch that anyways. So, but yeah, okay. That's supposed to be 2019.
Yeah, well, actually, I think 2020 is correct. It's just I should have used the 303,000 instead of the 298,000.
Okay, so that's what it should be, 303.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just carry on with my direction where I'm going here. So use the income for 2020. The amount is just different than what's shown. The expenses, however, you used an average from 2018 to 2020. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I don't understand why you wouldn't have used the same methodology for both income and expenses. Can you explain why you did that?
I guess for the income, you could reasonably expect that the income would remain at the 303,000 level. I mean, the odd time the income does go down, but generally speaking, the income does go up. And so it's reasonable to use the 303,000 the current year. And the applicant has actually used that same methodology in the past, and other agents have used the same methodology as well. But with regards to the expenses, we're trying to stabilize their expenses, so we believe that I guess an average of the expenses is a better indication than just using the 1 year, and that's why I averaged it. But you could get into it a little bit finer, but it's more of a overview of a bit of a rougher estimate than more detailed. And so yeah, I just decided to use the average because I thought it was reasonably representative of how it might incur expenses in the future.
Okay, and you're also saying that that's not uncommon to mix the methodology like you did. Correct.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. That's the only question I had.
I thank you. Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
Thank you. Yes, I'm starting with the valuation, and while everyone was talking, I went back through my files on the 10-year performance, and I do not agree with this workup. I don't think it's correct, and I can recalculate it. It would take too long. I think the best course of action is I'm going to accept the assessor's NOI, and you can see why the stabilization is just done wrong. So 129,275 rather than 122,488, and we still believe in a 6% cap, and so that my number comes upwards to 2,154,583, which is rounded to 2,155,000, and it is lower than the previous year. The reasoning is that it, like this property, like the one before, is two small buildings, and all of the rents are gross. So the landlord pays the cost of utilities. What you have is a situation where you have more envelope exposed to weather and inconsistent utility costs. Good years will be low, and bad years will be even higher because you have more skin loss on through thermal loss through the walls with small buildings, and as well as the breezeway, whatever you call it, which is also heated. That's the reason why the expense ratio is so high. Again, the same issues with the rest of the report. Now, normally we would probably look at that as a cap rate issue as well, but in this case, it was dealt with as an expense ratio issue. So we don't disagree with the assessor's workup on expense ratio either. The cap rate of 6 is based on the lack of parking for 30 units and the bedroom mix, which is again more bachelors, not as many as the other property that had more, but still, bachelors are not a great investment interest. So that's our value. The assessor's NOI and a cap rate of 6% to 2,155,000.
I thank you. Mr. Wong? Questions?
No questions.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden?
I have no question.
Thank you. Mr. Moretsky?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Summary, either party?
Okay.
Want to have a little break or take another one?
I wouldn't mind a break, thank you.
All right, let's take 10 minutes, okay? Mr. Newfield back?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, so we'll call the hearing back to order. And we're going to go to 795 Notre Dame Avenue. Mr. Wong, whenever you're ready, you can take us through this property.
Okay. The subject property is 765 Notre Dame Avenue. The roll number is 130-602-09000. The file number is 22-3833. This is a residential apartment block that's 6 stories high. It was built in 1955, and it has 81 suites with 40 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $638 for the taxable portion to get a potential rent of $345,000. We use a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $333,000. and we use a 51% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $161,000. At that 5.95%, we have an estimated market value of $2,718,000. The estimated operating income for the exempt portion is $129,000, and capped at 5.95%. The estimated value is $2,174,000. This building is operated by the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, and so their income and expenses aren't super indicative of market. So we will be looking to the market for evaluation of this property. So in terms of market rents, on page 5, the model rent is $638, and the market rents support this $638. And in the middle chart, there are some expense comparables that range from 44 to 52%. This supports the model's expense ratio at 51%. And the rent potential for the subject property is actually a bit higher than what the model is estimated. On the bottom of page 5, their indicated rents are $730 for 1-bedrooms, and so their potential rent is $709,000, whereas the model is estimated $621,000. So the market supports the model rents, and their actual rents actually support the model rents as well. On page 6 and 7 is information on how we derived our cap rates and some cap rate sales that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. On page 9 is the income statement supplied by the owner. On page 10 and 11 are their indicated rents more recently and in the past. So the model expenses and cap rate are supported by the market. The model rents are also supported by the market and by the actual rents from Winnipeg Regional Health. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $4,892,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Newfield?
Yes, I heard you say that your calculation was that the model rents met supported by the model. How about the model expenses?
What about the model expenses?
Do they conform to your model?
Yes.
Oh, and your rate is 51%. I'm just you didn't calculate the actual, did you?
No.
That was my question. Previously you talked about the subject, well, said the subject's potential rent met your model, but does the subject's expense ratio meet your model?
Yes, it does.
And I had calculated approximately 60%, and your model is at 51.5%. There's a bit of a variance there, isn't there?
Well, I didn't really look at their expenses because the property is run by the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, and I don't believe that they're very representative of market, and so market expenses at 51% are normal for the market.
Well, you're saying it's not normal for the market. I refer you to page 10. What is the eligibility for this property?
Students of HSC or University of Manitoba.
correct? And so this is student housing. Is that representative of the market for student housing?
I would say typically no, and that's kind of why we're looking to the market for valuing this property.
You brought up expense comparables on page 5. Are any of them student housing?
No, they are market housing, market apartments.
Well, okay, so you're talking about market, but if this property has a specific use, why would you even, why aren't you looking at the market for that specific use, like student housing?
Because as far as I know, there aren't any sales of student housing type properties. And so we're looking at this as if it was a regular apartment building, a regular market apartment building.
I wasn't looking for sales. I'm wondering, don't you have income and expense forms from student housing?
Yeah, but you would also need sales to generate cap rates.
We're not talking about cap rates, we're just talking about expense ratios, which is the revenue and expenses. You didn't review any of those?
Well, the thing is, you would need everything in order to try to come up with a valuation. You can't just include one aspect of a valuation and have it and then come up and then use that for estimating a value.
Haven't we, for the first part of the day, just gone through revenue and expense information to look at ratios? Why would you have to look at a sale? What does that matter?
I guess in my view, you would need some sales of some student housing, and then you can try to generate an accurate cap rate to try to utilize the expense ratio that you're speaking about.
Okay, well, if that's your view, that's a different story. I just was questioning on the world's view, and that we're differentiating from your view, and that's okay. In terms of capitalization rate, I just noticed that rather interesting that now we have a 1955 construction with a higher cap rate at 5.95% than the other 5 properties we've heard today. Why wouldn't it? Which one's wrong?
I don't believe any of them are wrong. With regards to the 5.9% cap rate, I believe that it is it's what the model has estimated for this subject property. And when you look at the value estimate, it's working out to about $60,000 per unit for a 1-bedroom unit, and that is very much within the norm for a value for a one-bedroom unit.
I was just asking about the percentage of the cap rate, not the rate per unit. 1955, 5.95%. We have heard other ones that were dated from 52 to 57 with rates varying between 5.2 and 5.3%. All of them are classified as RESAP, R-E-S-A-P. Why was this one higher? And you said the model doesn't take into account student housing. So what's the difference?
I'm not sure what the difference, what would garner a 5.95 versus the 5.3.
Okay. Do you know anything about the building physically?
I have not inspected the building.
Does your model take into account the provision of heating services from an outside source?
I don't know.
Okay, those are my questions. Thanks.
I thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Ms. McFadden?
Yeah, my question was around the cap rate as well, so I think it's been answered.
Okay. Mr. Boretsky?
Yes, how did you proportion between the exempt and taxable? Can you explain that?
This portioning was done a while back, and with regards to how it was separated, I'm not 100% sure.
By my math, I believe that it is 56 taxable, 44% exempt. That'd be correct.
That is correct, Bill. I did some calculations, so you're absolutely on the money.
But you don't know how, or do you know how that was arrived at? Mr. Assessor? How did you arrive at that proportioning?
I don't want to interrupt your questioning, but I'm fairly sure the assessor doesn't know, and I'm responsible for it, going back 20 years. If you want to speed matters up.
Okay. It got Mr. Wong off the hook.
I was hoping to, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Wong, you are muted.
Oh, I'm muted?
No, Mr. Wong.
Sorry.
Mr. Wong.
I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know how that happened. But as far as I can tell, it was determined by a Queen's Bench decision affidavit, and it was split 45 units for the CC 20 and 36 units for the CC 20 exempt.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that information. Just one more question again. I'd like to have you go back to page 5, and I think you've explained this, and maybe I just didn't get it the first time, but if you could do it again, that'd be very nice. On the rent potential at the bottom, I'm not sure what that means, that analysis there. You have the model potential on the right, 621,059. That is simply a sum of the two NOIs. Is that correct?
Yes.
So how is this rent potential arrived at using the rent of $730? What was the reasoning behind that?
The $730 leads to the rent potential of $709,000.
So where did the 730 come from?
Go to page 10.
Okay. Thank you. Missed that the first time. Fair enough. I got it now. Okay, thank you. Further question?
I thank you. Mr. Newfield, your presentation?
Yes, my involvement with this property actually goes back 25 years. I just can't count anymore. Back in 1997, we were engaged by the Health Sciences Center to review their taxes, and I'm taking responsibility. I found a section of the Act, which is section 22(1) C.2, and it's a residence operated by or in connection with the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority for undergraduate students in the health professions is exempt from taxation, fully exempt. And we began the process back then, and when we had a little bit of difficulty with the assessment department. Back then it was Brian Moore, and we ended up having to do a door-to-door enumeration. I went door to door. I knocked on everybody's door. Show me your student ID. Then we took the student numbers and went to the faculty and found out if they were in the health profession. So there'd be medical, dental, rehab, perfusion. There were a number of different categories. We ended up with the ratio here, and we repeated the operation around 2006, and at that point we came to an agreement with the city. The Court of Queens was what do they call that? They just ratified our decision. It was a judgment. Forgot the name of it. A consent judgment. That's it. On what we had decided. And so either party has the opportunity to change the ratio, provided they go door to door and do the study and the analysis. We informally know that it's roughly around here. We're probably due to look at it again at some point. And we do the same process. It's a fairly extensive job. So it's a consent amount percentage. And we carried it through by agreement, and it's 44.44%, this building exempt, and 55.56 taxable. That's the ratio, period. And I don't know if the assessor has changed that percentage at all. And I should probably check 2174. No,
It's the same. It's the same.
they've kept the same ratio. Yeah. So whatever you decide, it's got to be based on the ratios we've indicated on our page 1. We're using the actuals, and it's a very difficult property because it is student housing. It's a lot of bachelor units, studios, some 1-bedrooms, and there's a couple of larger units. It's got a parking, there's actually only 1 unit on the main level, and it's parking, open parking, so it's raised for open parking, and then all the units are above. Now it is attached to 2 Emily, which you're going to hear probably next, but they don't have a walkway between them, and there's a firewall. So if you want to walk from 765 to 2 Emily, you have to go outside and go in there. Each of the units, each of the buildings has their own this one's got the laundry facility. So if you're living in 2 Emily, you got to walk over. Okay, it's been a while. One of the buildings has an apartment on the main floor. The other one's got the laundry. So whatever, you got to walk over to the other one to do your laundry. The most interesting feature of this is the heat system. It is steam heat, and the source of the steam heat is HSC's own plant, off-premises plant. This does not have its own heat facilities. It's essentially non-marketable without being attached to the HSC. In the expense side, HSC have their workup, and you see that that they have it plugged in here. I'm looking for expenses, and it is, here we go, on page 4. The number they have is these are allocations from the hospital for the utilities. And it's what they do is they take the entire operation of the steam plant and which parts of the hospital receive it, and everybody gets the prorated amount based, I believe, on their area. So that's now the number is fair. The issue really is the fact that it's not marketable on its own whatsoever. Now, part of the way we would look at the valuation of this is that if there were enough factors that differentiate it from market operations in the other parts of the valuation, then the non-marketability would just be assumed that it's more of a fee simple operation. But remember, Manitoba does not have fee simple regulations for tax assessment. It's market value, not fee simple. So we do have to look at these legal restrictions. Legal restrictions, it's got to be students, and physical restrictions, it's got to be attached to the hospital. So in our cap rate analysis, we kind of lumped all of those into one category on page 2, which was the income growth potential. It's going to be fixed rents for students, and it's going to be attached to the operation. There's no, I suppose we could have changed that to a lower a different number, and then made an adjustment on perhaps quality or condition or design and layout. It was my decision when it was consulted. I said just put it all income growth potential, because the resultant cap rate at 7.25 is a fair indication of a building that can only be used for students by legal restrictions and has to be attached to a steam plant. I mean, the cost of heating the building, if it were sold separately, would, you'd have to convert it to, I guess, put in baseboards, which means a brand new electrical system and wiring, or buy the steam from HFC. So it's an interesting project, and over the years, the 25 years we've been working on it, we've tried to resolve it with a cap rate that was relatively higher than normal. So if for example, the earlier we were talking about 6% rates, this is a 1.25 points higher to deal with those situation, and that's historically where we've targeted and where we've come to agreement with the city. And we have come to agreement with the city, sometimes at Board of Revision, sometimes at Municipal Board, sometimes we live with the decision, but we prepare this the same way. A nominal increase from last year, 3.8 million, and the ratios as established by our consent judgment. I could go on for a long time and tell you all the fun I've had working on this building, but I'm keeping it down to a few minutes here for you. It is different.
I thank you, Mr. Newfield. Mr. Wong, questions?
No questions.
I thank you. Ms. McFadden?
My question is just about the suite mix. Mr. Neufeld, your suite mix on your page 1 is very different than Mr. Wong's. You have 65 bachelors. But I also note that in your cap rate analysis that you do on page 2, it talks about all 1 bedrooms, which is what Mr. Wong has. So what actually is the composition?
Oh, I see that. Look, I've been in it. I classify them as bachelors. There's a curtain division on most of these, rather than a wall division. It's you could call it a bad 1 bedroom or a good bachelor. Back when bead curtains were in vogue everywhere, that's what most of them have. So it's not a real designated bedroom area. I'd have to go back to my notes here. Probably in this case, it's not going to be a major factor because we're treating it all as student housing, and usually there's 2 people in every unit, 2 friends rooming together, going to school.
So the fact that you got your cap rate analysis at all 1 bedrooms, you wouldn't change that given the different suite mix?
No, I think what, like I said, the differentiation on, I think you could call this, I'm just going from memory here, but I think that there's a typo here. I think there's a mix of bachelors 1s, and I think there's a handful of 2 bedrooms, and there's 1 3-bedroom in here. I think in this case, as student housing, it's I think we've addressed it with the cap, with the way we've done the cap. It's 1.25 points higher than typical.
Okay, thank you. That's all my question.
I thank you. Mr. Moretsky?
I have no questions. Thank you.
I thank you. Summary, either party?
Oh, thank you.
I'm just going to answer that question. I think the misleading information was, if you take a look at the assessor's page 10, and they've got 65 bachelors, 61 1-bedrooms, 5 2-bedrooms. This includes 2 Emily. That's both of them. So that's probably where whoever did this up got the mix up on and I just considered a typo.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to 391 Gertrude Avenue. Mr. Newfield, there was no applicants brief.
Yes, I was just trying to sort that out this morning and I have the answer. So we're just gonna have that, ask for that to be confirmed.
All right, but what we'll do, we'll read it into the roll. Mr. Wong, you can take us through this property just briefly. All right, the floor is yours.
The subject property is 391 Gertrude Avenue. The roll number is 120-212-08200. The file number is 22-2730. And I asked for the subject property to be confirmed at 4,805,000.
All right. Mr. Newfield, questions?
Yes, actually, I do have one question. I know that you have an effective year of 1973. Was that due to the some renovations that happened?
Likely to be the case, yes.
I got your rear not coming through clearly.
That's likely to be the case, yes.
And in this case, with a 1973 effective age, why then is this capped higher than the 1955 ones we've seen at 5.65%?
I'm not sure why the model selected this one.
Thank you. I'm fine, and I just request this to be confirmed.
All right. Panel members, any questions?
No
No.
questions.
All right. Your request, Mr. Newfield, will be attended to by the panel. The next property we're going to go to is 1080 Wellington Avenue. Mr. Wong, whenever you're ready.
The subject property is 1080 Wellington Avenue. The roll number is 130-114-83500. The file number is 22-2698. This is a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1972 and it has 66 suites with 59 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $772 to get a potential income of $611,000. We used a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $592,000. And we used a 58% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $245,000. At that 5.757%, we have an estimated value of $4,302,000. On page 6 is our income and expense summary. In 2020, their income was $603,000. Their expenses were $508,000. So you can see that's a pretty high proportion of their operating income, but it was due to their repair and maintenance being very high. But removing line items such as the interest from their expenses and removing their higher repair and maintenance of $247,000. That $247,000 works out to $3,700 per suite. That's very high, and that's well outside the norms for repair and maintenance, normal repair and maintenance. So I've replaced it with a more market repair and maintenance figure of $1,342. So I put the repair and maintenance back in at $88,000, and so with that adjustment, their operating expenses are $317,000, and their estimated net operating income is $286,000. So this $286,000 supports the model's a net operating income of $245,000, actually over $40,000 higher than what the model is estimated. But on the bottom of page 6 are some repair and maintenance comparables, and with their average being 1,342, which is what I've utilized for the subject property. On page 7 and 8 is information on how we derived our cap rates, with some cap rate sales that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. And the remainder of my brief is the income statement supplied by the property owner. To conclude, the model rent and the cap rate are supported by the market and their actual NOI. When you adjust for their high repair and maintenance, it supports the model net operating income. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $4,302,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Newfield, questions?
Yes, page 4, valuation, was this done by the model?
Yes.
So in this case, we have a 1972 building that is capping at, the model's capping it at 5.7%. Again, higher cap rates for newer buildings. Do you know why that happens?
I'm not sure about the cap rate being higher for newer buildings, but I'm not sure about how it selected the 5.7%, but it does estimate the value accurately in my view.
You did this workup on page 6, and you determined that repairs and maintenance should be adjusted. And what was the evidence behind this?
Well, their repair and maintenance is $3,700 per unit, and in my experience, that's much higher than what a building would normally operate at. And once again, if you utilize that repair and maintenance, their expenses are $508,000, which is of $603,000. That's much higher than what a normal apartment would operate at, and it would unlikely sell at that expense ratio. So I made an adjustment for the repair and maintenance to be at more market levels.
Now, you say market level. So what are you supposed to do if your building needs to be fixed? You just tell people I'm not doing it because that's not market?
Well, if the building needs to be fixed, it's not stable, and so you would fix it and then have it become stable. And at a normal market repair and maintenance level.
Did you go back in time to look at repair and maintenance historically?
Level, which is what I've applied.
I'm looking at the mailers going back to I have them right in front of me going back to 2014. Did you review any of the prior ones to see what repair and maintenance was?
I did not.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thanks.
I thank you. Ms. McFadden?
I have no further questions. Thanks.
I thank you. Ms. Boretsky?
So I just want to maybe try to understand the logic a little more behind your methodology on the expenses. I mean, those expenses are experienced by the owner. In this case, in 2020, were very high expense. But you're saying it's unstable, meaning that it should not be considered. But is that a correct, how shall we say, characterization of what you're saying?
Yeah, the property is, it would not, you wouldn't stabilize the property's operating income using the $508,000 in expenses. Like I'm pretty sure that if an appraiser were to look at this, they would not stabilize at that figure.
But you know, just considering a building that you own or a house or whatever it is, you know, there's going to be years where you don't do repair and maintenance, and then you're going to kind of save it all up and do it in 1 year, right? But does that mean that that isn't part of your expenses for that structure? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a part
Could
of the
it be
expenses,
just,
but
yeah,
yeah, I mean,
okay,
but it's possible that these numbers, they do include capital items and they wouldn't normally, they wouldn't be normally occurring. So we're trying to estimate how the expenses would be on a normal stabilized basis. And and I guess I've utilized repair and maintenance that is more normal for this type of a property to try to estimate the value. And with the with my adjusted operating expenses coming in at about 52%, that's pretty much what a normal operating expense ratio would be for this type of a building. So I feel it's reasonable in calculating it this way.
okay, no, I understand what you're saying, yeah. Okay, I will, I'm satisfied with that answer, thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was just reviewing some historical information. That issue here is obviously the expenses, and I'll give you a bit of background on the building. My client purchased this building about a year before I started working for them, and my first conversation on the building is, what happened here? And he said, we made a big mistake. After they began doing their more detailed review, the deferred maintenance was just huge. So the 10-year average on this is actually very, very high, and it's all deferred maintenance. There's no capital upgrades here, where they went through and did a complete renovation. You know, you're seeing, I'm just going to give you some historical numbers. In 2020, 248,000, 2019, 384,000, 2018, 153,000, 17, 152,000, 16, 267,000. So the story, you know, just is just been, it needs $1 million in work, and they're doing, and repairs, deferred maintenance, and they're doing a couple $100,000 a year. So the concept of trying to stabilize this is incorrect. What I see what the assessor has done on his workup, which is also a little troubling, is okay, so he's put it at $1,300 a unit, or $88,000 a year. In the 8 years I've been looking back, it has never been that low. They had 1 year in 2014 where it bottomed out at 114,000, but the average over time has been about $240,000 a year, and it's that's how you characterize the building. Every building's differently, and to suggest that there's a market model to base it on is incorrect. There is the building itself is the sole determination of what work needs to be done. I see no permits taken out. It's just all been deferred maintenance, and everything from paving to brick pointing to carpets, appliances, cabinets, plumbing fixtures, everything was required. So it was just a bad deal and a poor return on their investment. That's all. And so what we have to look at is the history of the building, and has this continued. In my last conversation with them, which occurred in May of this year, was no, we're not finished. We still have a fair amount of work to do. So we're accepting these numbers at and now you can see that what we've done with our R&M on this is we've actually adjusted it to 153,000, and instead of the 248 that was used, and then we stabilized at 223,000 NOI. So before I open my mouth, I should have probably looked and seen what the person that did this did. I guess I would have stabilized higher, but that's fine. I'm not going to change anything. But we have the number should be closer to 200, not 153. But we're not going to change that because the truth of the matter is it was also addressed in the cap rate, the difference between what they're actually experiencing and that the quality and condition issues and the high repairs and maintenance and the income stability. So that's why we've capped it at 6.5, is because the spending hasn't stopped and there's no indication when it will. Again, we're looking at high degree of 1-bedroom units. And you know, when we make this change for 1-bedroom units, that's 2 points. That's 0.12% of a cap rate. So this isn't a major factor. These are a bunch of small factors. The major one in this case is the quality and condition of it. So 6.5% is fair with what they have to look forward to. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Newfield. Mr. Wong, questions?
So you did make an adjustment to the repair and maintenance and their expenses for stabilizing?
The person who did this made the adjustment to 153,000, and I did the math very quickly. The 8-year average is 195,000. So that's why I'm saying we should have stabilized higher, but we've accounted for it in the cap.
Why didn't they just use all of the repair and maintenance as indicated?
Pardon me?
Why didn't they use all of the repair and maintenance as indicated?
Well, the work's been going on since they took over the building, and it's just a question of budget. So they have a budget 1 year to do one project and budget another year to do another project. There's no rule there that they gotta do it all in 1 year, and it's not an upgrade. It's just catching up with deferred maintenance.
I guess my question was, like, in 2020, their indicated expenses were 508,000, but in your stabilization, you say that their indicated expenses are 382,000. Why didn't they use the 508,000 for your stabilization?
Well, there's we didn't use 508,000. We took out the 32,000 in expenses, and we changed 248,000 to 153,000, which makes the expense load 382,000 rather than 508,000. So that's the difference, and that's what we did for 2020. And then, but by doing so, it also kind of lined up with the averages from previous years.
Okay, that's all my questions.
I thank you. Ms. McIntyre.
McFadden.
Why do I do that?
Name is, I have no further questions.
Ms. McFadden.
I have no further questions, thanks.
Okay, I thank you. Bill?
I do not have any questions, thanks.
I don't have any, so summation on either party?
Well, thank you.
Good, thanks.
All right, we'll go to the next one. Number 2, Emily Street. Mr. Wong, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sometimes you guys, like, my internet connection appears to be a little bit flaky.
Number 9 on your agenda.
Okay. The subject property is 2 Emily Street. This would be very similar to 765 Notre Dame. The roll number is 130-602-06100. The file number is 22-3832. This is a residential apartment block that's 6 stories high. It was built in 1954 and it has 51 suites with 12 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $504, and for the for the taxable portion, the potential is 157,000. We use a 3.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of 152,000, and we use a 61% expense ratio to get a net operating income of 58,000. Got that 5.8%. We have an estimated market value of 1,011,000. The estimated NOI for the exempt portion is 56,000. Capped at 5.8%. The estimated value is 972,000. So just like 765 Notre Dame, we're going to be looking to the market to try to estimate the value for the subject property. On page 5 are some rent comparables showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market and maybe a little bit lower. In the middle of the middle chart on page 5 are some expense comparables that range from 44 to 52%. This supports the model's 61% expense ratio. And the rent potential using their actual rent is 446,000, and it supports the model's rent potential at 308,000. On page 6 and 7 is information on how we derived our cap rates and some cap rate sales that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. And on page 10 and 11 is some rental information from Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. So the model expenses and the cap rate are supported by the market, and the model rents are also supported by the market, but also supported by the rents that WRHA is asking. So I ask that you maintain the assessed value at 1,983,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Newfield?
With the board's consent, of course, I'm not going to ask the same questions I asked for 765 Notre Dame. I'm assuming that they're into the record. I did have a couple of things I noted here. Does your model take into account the zoning?
I'm not sure.
You are aware that you are not allowed to build apartments on E&I zoning unless they're part of the complex that qualifies for EI zoning, such as a hospital?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And then the cap rate here, 5.8% for 1954 construction. That does not seem to be consistent with the rest we've heard today. Any idea why the model differentiates?
The cap rate for 760 or 765 Notre Dame is 5.9, and so that's similar to 5.8.
I'm speaking of the 1954, 1952 sites we've heard today at 5.2%.
I'm not sure of the difference.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Ms. McFadden?
I don't have any questions, thanks.
I thank you. Mr. Moretsky?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay, I have none. So, Mr. Newfield, whenever you're ready, you can take us through your presentation.
Thank you. This is the attached building to 765 Notre Dame. As I mentioned, there's a firewall. It does not have a door in it. It was built at in stages. One building was a year different than the other, but they were designed and built as the medical center apartments in 1954, 55, and always have been called that. Same story. I went door to door. The ratios are different because we're doing it by units numbers. That's how we decided. We agreed to do it, so that's why the ratio is slightly different. 49.02%. I noted the assessors used the same ratio, so we would just kindly ask if you could maintain those ratios. And I figured out the other answer to the 1 and 2 bedroom dilemma. Okay. The north side and the south side are consistent in each building, and I've forgotten which is which, but one side has bachelors and the other side has 1 bedrooms, and that's through 765 and 2 Emily. So that's why they're all skewed off, but we've used, we viewed them as one. Valuation was done the same way. You can see we used the same income and did the ratio breakdown by unit size, and same cap rate. And in this case, our estimated value 1,833,000 is higher than the previous year, but less than the current assessment. It's almost in the middle. Thank you. That's my presentation.
I thank you, Mr. Newfield. Mr. Wong, questions?
No questions.
I thank you. Ms. McFadden?
I have no questions.
I thank you. Mr. Boretsky?
I guess your overall NOI is 150,896 for this property.
Yes, that's correct.
So that is higher than the city's at 115,000. Is that also, you'll realize that? Yeah.
They're at 114 or so.
115,000 somewhere around there.
Oh, well, I guess so. They are the actuals, and I suspect that our method of doing this differed. That's all. They have a model, and if you add 765 Notre Dame to Emily, which is the way we did it, there's going to be, we kind of looked at the whole operation and did an allocation. So all I would suggest to the board would be that whichever way you look at it, you should probably try to appreciate the nature of this, that it is one property, and apply the same style of valuation. And that would be appropriate.
You're fine with your NOI though?
Yes, I am. Because like at 765, the difference was probably in there. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Okay, no further questions.
I thank you. Summation, either party?
No, thank you.
I think I just said it. Thanks.
All right. Let's go to the last property, which is 230 Hugo Street North. Mr. Wong, whenever you're ready.
Okay, the subject property is 230 Hugo Street North. The roll number is 120-222-18000. The file number is 22-3859. This is a residential apartment that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1933, and it has 18 suites with 8 indoor parking stalls and 8 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 4 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,229 to get a potential income of $265,000. We use a 4.2% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $254,000. And we use a 52% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $119,000. Capped at 5.3% of an estimated market value of $2,262,000. On page 5 are some rent comparables, showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's in the market. On page 6 is a summary of their income and expenses for 2020. Their income is $249,000. Their expenses are $160,000, but their repair and maintenance figures were higher than what would be in the marketplace. So I made an adjustment for the repair and maintenance. Um, I use a market repair and maintenance of $1,386 per suite. And to get their operating expenses to be $125,000, which is about 50.5% of their income. Their estimated net operating income is about $123,000, and this supports the model's net operating income of $119,000. On page 7 and 8 is information on how we derived our cap rates and some cap rate sales that range from 3.6 to 5.74%. The remainder of my brief is the income statement supplied by the owner. So when you look at the model rent and cap rate, it is supported by the market, and their actual net operating income, when you adjust for their high repair and maintenance, it supports the model's net operating income. I ask they maintain the assessed value at $2,262,000.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Neufeld? Questions?
Page 4, this was prepared by the model, is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, in this case, why would the expense ratio on a building from 1933 be lower than some of the other ones we've heard today? I know, if you recall, there was 58% and higher. Why is this so low considering the age? Wouldn't you expect it to be higher?
Sometimes we have different attributes on different properties, and so some properties perform very poorly, and so the attributes are adjusted in that regard. So this one, that's why not all the buildings have 50% expenses.
On that topic on expenses, you've done this method of rationalizing the assessment by adjusting the subject's actual repair and maintenance. And in doing so, why do you use an average? I mean, you got 2 of these, your comparables were higher than your average. Well, how about looking at the mean or the median, or looking at the ranges? Don't these all have ranges?
Yeah, you could look at any of them.
Okay, and how about historical performance of the property? Did you go back in time and look at the historical repair and maintenance?
I did not.
Wouldn't another method for trying to stabilize these expenses would be to look at them over time and average them, stabilize them? Is that not an acceptable method?
You could.
Okay. And but you're only quoting the one particular year of 2020, correct? For example, I'm looking at the 2019, and the expenses, maintenance and repair, were about 2,000 a unit. So wouldn't that be a way of doing it, is look at the previous year and seeing how it worked? I guess I already asked that question.
Determine for sure that if you could determine for sure that there was no capital in the repair and maintenance, you could.
Well, okay, but if you're concerned about there being capital, then you're not presenting evidence to the board, such as a building permit or anything of the sort, are you?
No.
Okay, those are my questions. Thanks.
I thank you. Ms. McFadden?
Yeah, I guess I'm questioning the cap rate at 5.3 on a 1933 building. I mean, your rate within the 20th percentile is, I think, 5.2 at the bottom, which would suggest that this would be a superior almost building, or a very high range building. So I do question that.
Yeah, sometimes the cap rates don't necessarily are indication of superiority nowadays. As far as I can tell, the cap rates are just their net operating income with the relationship to the sale price. I think maybe, as far as I know, maybe 10 years ago, before my time in valuation, that might have been the case, but what I've been seeing over the last few years is that they're a little bit more jumbled together. And so sometimes you'll have buildings, similar buildings with different cap rates, and that's just what's happening in the market right now.
230 Hugo might be considered a more a better area of the city than some of these others, perhaps.
That could be the case.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Moretsky?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. To follow up Linda's comment, I think Hugo is a very nice area in that area there. It's I think the cap rate, according to the age here, doesn't sort of warrant, due to the age. I think the cap rate should probably be higher. Comments?
I mean, it could be higher, but I believe it actually could be lower as well. In this particular case, I believe that the 5.3 is within the range of cap rates for this type of property in this area.
All right, Mr. Wong, I thank you kindly. Mr. Newfield, your presentation.
Yes, thank you. I'm just looking at the outside picture of it. I see it's right next door to Saffron's on Hugo Street. The building, if you'll note the assessor's workup, all the properties you've heard today on the apartments, with the exception of the hospital ones, are all Smith Agency properties. And this one, as the assessor pointed out, the ownership is in Tom Smith's name. I believe this is an original vintage Smith Agency property that they built themselves. Their company was founded in 1912 and has been in their possession since that time. So I think that's interesting in itself, but as it relates to value, what we looked at is, again, my revenue and expenses with that work I've been doing on them since 2008, and it's always had high repairs and maintenance. It's just at that age, whereas I love this saying, it smokes, but it's old enough. It's just going to cost that much. Now, because of our method of stabilization on this, which does vary from comparing to the last couple, we looked at this on the basis of stabilization at obviously the last year of income, which is very similar to 2019, no real movement happening, and then averaging out the expenses. I mentioned 2019, the repair and maintenance were $36,000 or $2,000 per unit. In 2020, they were higher, but then in 2018, they were higher. So this isn't a factor of any sort of capital. This is just the variable cost of maintaining an older building. And trying to maintain it as well as possible, not letting it get run down. This is what this company does, is maintains their buildings and spends to maintain them. And it impacts their income. And it's a process that if you skip a few years, like 1080 Wellington, before they purchased it, you're going to spend more money later. So anyway, that's how we did our valuation on it, and our NOI is 106,950, which I think is a very fair representation of an older building. Differs from the assessors by about $10,000. Now, as to the capitalization, I think I heard the discussion that was going through our minds. We have an older building that should be capped higher, but we have a good location, which is why we only went to 6% on it, essentially. because one does mitigate the other. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Newfield. Mr. Wong, questions of Mr. Newfield?
No questions.
I thank you. Ms. McFadden,
I have no questions.
I thank you. Mr. Radsky,
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Newfield, tell me how you can get the cap at 6%.
Well, again, we start, our starting point is always the Collier's absolute best rate of 5%. And the best rate, as I mentioned, is going to be a unit like the ones I pointed out in the first case today, the 336 Ward, which is in there for a low rise, and the ones by IKEA for the higher rise. That's top quality. And then after that, everything is downward. So we adjusted for the lack of parking stalls. We adjusted for the age and the quality and the condition. And quality and condition isn't so much that it's run down. It's more, in this case, more of a factor of not being able to get the spare parts that were built in 1933. You could never replace parts of this building with the original woodwork. So that's where sometimes quality and condition, like I said, doesn't necessarily refer to what it looks like. It refers to what's it going to cost to fix it. It's a small building at 18 units, which means that the expenses are going to be higher. The concept is real simple. If you have a 100-unit building, you got two doors, a front and a rear door. You got an 18-unit building, you got two doors, a front door and a rear door. You replace a door at $10,000. You divide it by the number of units for the expense ratio, which is why we're at 57% expense ratio, and that's why it's higher. And then the other two factors, as far as the age, is normally, I think we would have looked at this as being a much more severe factor, but it's not written in here. But the location is 10 out of 10, and maybe it should have been 11 out of 10, right? And that's why we put it at 6%, and not. I mean, with the age, if it weren't located on Hugo, we'd probably be talking about in the 7% range.
Mr. Newfield, yeah. How many times have you represented this property?
This is number 7.
Okay. And you've always appealed this. I've sat a few times on here.
Yeah, Smith Agency is not the same as top notch. They have their niche, and they run their properties differently. And we just look at what how they actually perform. That's always been the major issue.
You've been through this building? Yes.
At one point, yes.
Yeah. Boiler system in there?
Yes.
Okay. I thank you. Summation, either party?
No, thank you.
I have a general summation.
Yes.
And I'll be short. Colliers helps people sell buildings, and Smith Agency are clients of ours in buying buildings. They don't sell a lot of buildings, they buy them. We have a cap rate system that's derived from a combination of the money markets, but in multifamily's case, heavily skewed on actual experiences. So top buildings in the city are between 5 and 6%. And you'll note that with the exception of the strange properties of the Health Sciences Center, we've just put these at the top of our range, which is where they belong, the top number in our range, because these are everyone you've heard today is a C or a D property, and our ranges are A's and B's. And I think we've been very, very consistent in the way the market would treat them. And again, real market, not hypothetical. Our values our caps aren't set by people sitting at a desk. They're people who are selling the property. So I think that has to be taken into account. Thank you.
I thank you. Mr. Newfield, thank you for all your presentations and results shortly. Mr. Wong, thank you for your presentations, and you have a good day. We have heard all the items scheduled at this hearing is now adjourned. So have a good day, Mr. Newfield, Mr. Wong. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye.
Okay, how about we take maybe a couple minutes